The alleged first official census of the entire United States was implemented on a day dubbed as Census Day on August 2nd, 1790. See, now, what's very important to note here is that the quote, free people of color were recorded all in one group. And also note that it states free and not freed, as if they were freed people from some form of enslavement. I go into more detail about the census labels in the documentary that I'll link above right now. But I said all of that for a particular reason, and that is, the official 1790 US Census population count was a total of 3,929,214 people. But keep in mind that this total amount did not reflect millions of people who were indigenous to North America, aka Turtle Island, meaning they did not come from another continent, nor did it reflect the accurate total amount of so-called slaves in North America. Why? Well, the US Census Agency themselves admitted to not possessing the majority of their official historical records of information that was allegedly documented between the 1790 US Census and all the way up to the 1830 US Census. And their excuse was to claim that these records were lost or destroyed somehow. See, this was all purposely done for two reasons. A, to hide the truth about the real history surrounding the US and slavery. I mean, generally speaking, you can literally prove to yourself that your ancestors were slaves or not by documentation. You can check and see if your ancestors came off a boat. I've been sharing this information publicly for years now, along with my sources. And I still have not heard from anyone that used my instructions to trace their family that I have available on Amazon Prime and anywhere else books are sold, that one of their ancestors were documented as being a former slave. The people that reached out to me that has or is currently undergoing research on their family's history have not failed with discovering that their family members were either never enslaved and has always been free, or worked as an indentured servant for money, land ownership, business ownership, etc., and considered to be freedmen once their obligations of servitude expired. Make no mistake, when you hear the term freedman from now on, freedman does not necessarily mean that he or she was freed from enslavement, because it can also mean relieved from their duties in most commonly known cases. So this first reason to allegedly lose or destroy these records was to hide the truth that it was a very small amount of copper-colored slaves and a greater amount of prisoners of war in North America. And the second reason is B, to hide the truth about who are the real minority and majority in terms of the population count here in the United States of America. In which this brings me to my very next point. The biggest portion of their agenda was the abominable sabotaging of the indigenous Niji's history, legacy, languages, culture, and heritage systematically. So of course they couldn't pull this task off on their own. So they implemented a methodology format based solely on the scientific concepts of eugenics. According to the National Archives, the term eugenics was coined by a British natural scientist and explorer named Francis Galton in the year of 1883. Now, there are two sides to every coin, so I'll be sure to flip each side over, and I'm not theoretically speaking here. Eugenics was implemented to help improve one selected group of people and their future generations to come, to overtake and oversee yet another set group of people and their future generations by way of extermination of their mindsets. This rabbit hole goes much deeper than one may assume. Allow me to simplify the explanation of this paramount method utilized by the likes of your industrialized institutions throughout America still to this very day. Eugenics literally changes everything that any person was ever taught of or even thought of previously before this selection was carried out upon him or her. According to Francis Galton himself, this system would allow, quote, more suitable races or strains of blood a better chance of prevailing speedily over the less suitable, end quote. Galton was heavily influenced by the likes of an English naturalist, biologist, and the first ever self-proclaimed documented bigoted genealogist, Charles Darwin. Darwin single-handedly developed the controversial theory of human evolution, which was his belief that man came from monkeys, and then his system of natural selection, which included a heavy flux of racial derogatory.
Since 1859, that's when Charles Darwin introduced Origin of Species by natural selection and the favored human races. Did you know that today they only report half the title that Charles Darwin wrote? His title had to do with favored human races, assigning supremacy to the Aryan race, all others being inferior.